house without her cell phone, her wallet, her purse, unless it was not on her own accord or her own terms. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Amber. Today I am going to be finally talking about the very mysterious case of Chandra Levy. Now, for the longest time, Chandra Levy was considered a missing person, and then she was found. And for a while, the case was unsolved, and then for a while, the case was solved, and now here we are, and the case is still not necessarily solved in the sense that you would think. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. As with every true crime case that I cover on my channel, I do so with the utmost respect to the victims and their families. And anytime I talk about anything, it is based off of the information that I can find online that is already publicly available from the authorities, news reports, and other reliable sources. If for some reason there is some sort of mistake in some of the information that I present, I would really appreciate if you can tell me in the comments below in a very respectful manner, and I will make sure to put an annotation within the description box and or a pinned comment and or in my next true crime video. So without further ado, we're going to talk about the very mysterious disappearance and subsequent unsolved of Chandra Ann Levy. Chandra Ann Levy was born on April 14th, 1977 in Cleveland, Ohio, to Peter, a medical doctor, and Susan Levy, her mother. At a young age, her parents packed up Chandra and her younger brother Adam, and they moved to Modesto, California. As a child, Chandra's personality stood out. She had a very bold personality, and she was very confident, and she just was one of those kids that you watch and you're like, okay, they're destined for greatness. She was the only girl in her hometown to participate in Little League baseball and Explorer Scouts program. She even worked undercover, helping police prosecute local stores who were selling alcohol to underage kids. As a teenager, Chandra also talked about becoming a model, as evidenced in her widely circulated glamour shots that made headlines soon after her disappearance. So after she graduated from Grace M. Davis High School in 1995, Chandra earned a Bachelor's of Associates from San Francisco State University, while she was also simultaneously working as an editor assistant at the newspaper called the Modesto Bee. She later sought to accomplish her master's degree from the University of Southern California. In order to complete her master's degree, she served as an intern in Washington, D.C. at the Federal Bureau of Prisons from the year 2000 to 2001. This is where she met and began having an alleged affair with then Congressman Gary Condit. The then 24-year-old's family and friends described her as an enigma. She was said to be ambitious and coveted power. She followed a vegetarian diet, but that's the least of what people have to say about her. According to her acquaintances in her profile interview, she dreamed of a career for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But the beautiful young woman also wanted to be a model and pose for glamour shots, like I said previously, when she was 17. Her friends knew about her public administration dreams, but they couldn't even guess which political party she supported. One claimed that she interned in multiple places to build up a resume. So she was assigned to the Office of Public Affairs Division. There she impressed with her knack to handle media inquiries and sensitive criminal cases, but her internship was terminated abruptly after she returned to California to graduate in May of 2001. She never made it home. So if we're going kind of according of a timeline, April 23rd, 2001, her Bureau of Prisons internship ended. Then on April 28th, Levy tells her landlord in an email that she's moving back to California for good. On April 30th, Levy cancels her membership at the Washington Sports Club, which is like a gym. And then on May 1st, Levy's parents receive an email from their daughter talking generally about her travel plans. And it is the last known contact they ever had with Chandra. So Chandra was last seen on May 1st, 2001. Metropolitan Police Department of the District of Columbia was the first alerted on May 6th when her parents called from Modesto to report that they had not heard from their daughter in 5 days, which was unlike her because she had a really good relationship with her family. So the police called local hospitals and prisons just to make sure that she wasn't hurt somewhere in a hospital or like unconscious or somewhere in prison. They also visited Levy's apartment in DuPont Circle that day, finding no indication of foul play. On May 7th, 2001, Chandra Levy's father told the police that his daughter had been having an affair with a U.S. congressman and said the next day that he believed the congressman to be U.S. Representative Gary Condit. Levy's aunt also called the police and told them that Chandra had confided in her about the affair. Now, Chandra was actually said to be very close with this specific aunt, and the specific aunt allegedly said that she knew very specific details, not just about their affair, but about gifts that Gary had allegedly given Chandra. Just very intimate details that nobody that was kind of guessing or speculating at this alleged relationship would know unless they were very close in the inner circle to Chandra. So her aunt also called the police and told them that Chandra had confided in her about the affair. Police later obtained a warrant on May 10th, 2001 to conduct a formal search of Chandra Levy's apartment. Investigators found her credit cards, identification, and mobile phone left behind in her purse, along with partially packed suitcases. So that's already a red flag, because what young woman would leave the house without her cell phone, her wallet, her purse, you know what I mean? Unless there was some sort of reason she had to quickly vacate the premises, or it was not on her own accord or her own terms. Now, the half-packed suitcases could be accounted for in my opinion, because basically it would make sense that she had half-packed suitcases because she was getting done with her trip, or she was getting ready to leave, or she just came home. Her answering machine, which a lot of us don't have today, but her answering machine was full, and there were messages left by her relatives and 2 from Gary Condit. A police sergeant tried to examine Chandra Levy's laptop computer and inadvertently corrupted the internet search data, as he was not a trained technician. Computer experts took a month to reconstruct the data to determine that the laptop was used on the morning of May 1st, 2001 to search for websites related to Amtrak, Baskin-Robbins, Condit South Airlines, and a weather report from the Washington Post. Her final search was at 12:59 p.m., and that was for Alaska-Lorraine, a province in France. A particular search at 11:33 a.m. was for information about Rock Creek Park in the Washington Post's entertainment guide. Then at 11:34, she clicked a link to bring up a map of the park. Detectives later theorized that she might have met someone at the Pierce Klingle Mansion, which houses the park headquarters. On July 25th, 2001, 3 DC police sergeants and 28 police cadets searched all along Glover Road in the park, but they failed to find any evidence to Levy. Later, a second attempt was made and they still found nothing. Chandra Levy's parents and friends held numerous vigils and news conferences in an attempt to bring Chandra Levy home. So of course, when the alleged affair came out into the media, controversy immediately surrounded her disappearance case, because here's a married congressman who has a position of power. Here is a young intern who is single and is telling some people that she is in a relationship with this married man. And we all know that these things can go awry, but we just don't realize how badly, and we don't know if Gary had anything to do with it, because just because you had an affair with someone, it doesn't mean you're going to hurt them, right? I mean, there's so many people that have affairs that they never end up killing the person or having them go missing. Condit, a married man who represented the congressional district in which the Levy family resided, at first denied having any kind of affair with her. He had said that it was platonic. He'd only talked to her on a handful of occasions, and it was strictly regarding her internship at the office. Although police stated that Condit was not a suspect, Levy's family said they felt Condit was being evasive and possibly hiding information about the matter. So on July 7th, 2001, unidentified police sources did say they alleged that Condit had admitted to an affair with Levy during an interview with those law enforcement officers. Condit described her to police as a vegetarian who avoided drinking and smoking. He thought that Levy was going to return to Washington, D.C. after her graduation, and was surprised to find out that the lease on her apartment had ended. Investigators searched Condit's apartment on July 10th, and they questioned flight attendant Anne Marie Smith, who claimed that Condit told her she did not need to speak to the Federal Bureau of Investigation about his personal life. Federal officials began investigating Condit for possible obstruction of justice, as Smith was also involved in an affair with him. She was not acquainted with Levy, though. Upset by leaks into the media, Condit refused to submit to a polygraph test by the DC police. His attorney asserted that Condit passed a test administered by a privately hired examiner on July 13, 2001. He avoided answering direct questions during a televised interview on August 23rd with news anchor Connie Chung. And this was a huge break for Connie Chung's career as a journalist and an interviewer, by the way. So this interview took place on the ABC News program called Primetime Thursday. Intensive news coverage continued in regard to the disappearance of Chandra Levy and her case, and the mysterious relationship between her and Gary. Now, this continued until the very, very tragic news of the September 11, 2001 attacks and that superseded the media's coverage of the Levy case, naturally. In a nationwide Fox News opinion dynamics poll of 900 registered voters conducted in July 2001, 44% of American respondents thought that Condon was involved in Levy's disappearance, and 27% felt that he should resign. 51% of the respondents believed that he was acting as if he were guilty. 13% felt that he should run again for office. A poll sample taken from Condon's congressional district held a more favorable view of Condon. On March 5th, 2002, Condon lost the Democratic primary election for his congressional seat to his former aide, then Assemblyman Dennis Cardoza, with the Levy controversy being cited as a contributing factor. He was subpoenaed to appear on April 1st, 2002, before a District of Columbia grand jury investigating the disappearance. The date was kept a carefully guarded secret to avoid further leaks. Condon left Congress at the end of his term on January 3rd, 2003. The day that they did look at his apartment, they got a tip from someone, a tip to the police that said they should check his trash. Allegedly, witnesses said that it looked like Gary Condon was hiding something. So they went to his garbage can, and inside they found a watch box in the trash. It was an expensive watch from California, and it was a gift by a woman named Jolene. She told the police that she once had an affair with Gary and she had gifted him the watch. So why would the congressman be trying to hide a 7-year-old watch from evidence? And that's when the flight attendant came forward and said publicly that she had some very damning evidence and stories to tell about a steamy affair that she herself had with Gary Condon for the last year. According to her, Gary was having an affair with her and with Chandra Levy at the same time. According to Congressman Condon, though, Levy had a fantasy about him and Smith and her, and Smith and him and another man getting together. So basically a threesome, but 2 men and her rather than 2 women and him. She also accused him of having ties and all kinds of extracurricular sexual supplies at his home. Of course, he denied everything and said that she was in it for the fame and the fame alone. Then a woman named Linda Zamsky also came forward to challenge him, and that was Chandra Levy's aunt. So Chandra Levy's aunt, Linda Zamsky, actually came forward with a 15-page statement and released it, saying that Chandra was in love / obsessed with Gary Condon. Allegedly, some of these details include the tons of extensive rules that Gary had for them to be together. So basically, they were never allowed to be in an elevator together. He would have to go first, Chandra would have to follow, just in case friends were around and would see them together. And she was never supposed to have her identification on her in case they were out together at dinner, so people could not identify who she was. Notably, when she went missing, her driver's license was also left behind. So that would also lead to the fact that maybe she went to go see Gary, and the reason her driver's license was left behind is because one of his rules for when they would hang out with each other was that she could not have any ID on her. So was Chandra Levy going to see him on the day of May 1st, 2001? We don't know. Another one of Chandra's friends allegedly came forward and said that she wanted to have a baby and didn't want to be a mistress. She wanted him to leave his wife and get married. And allegedly she was pushing Gary to confront his wife and leave her. He submits to a third interview with police 67 days later, and he finally admits to a sexual relationship. After this, the media went crazy, but still he wouldn't say that he had anything to do with her disappearance. So again, investigators spoke to the press, and the press went wild.
Now, as you can imagine, there has been a lot of speculation when it comes to whether or not Gary Condon had anything to do with the disappearance of Chandra, right? Because they were having an affair, and a lot of things just kind of point to, yes, they did. I mean, the fact that he allegedly had affairs with other women and would tell them not to talk to the police, a lot of people just kind of assume that he's guilty. Well, I did find an article when doing research for this case, and this is as late as 2018 that it was posted. I will leave my sources linked down below. But there's a couple things that we learned since the beginning of this case. So allegedly, the morning that Chandra Levy went missing at 4:30 a.m., there was a 911 call to the police from her neighbors. The neighbors had reported that there was a scream coming from somewhere in the building. Police came to the building, but no one was able to determine the source of the scream. Now, we don't know definitively if that was Chandra screaming, but it was at her apartment building. Also, in regards to the apartment building, the apartment building in which she resided at was heavily equipped with security cameras. However, the delay from when she was reported missing until the police obtained a search warrant was such that the camera footage had been recycled over. Had investigators been more urgent in finding Chandra, they may have been able to obtain video footage of her entering and exiting the building. which in turn could have led to more clues to her disappearance that night. It also says, in May 2002, a year after Chandra went missing, an entire year, police got a call from a jogger who said that he had found a human skull while jogging on a trail in Rock Creek Park. Now, if Rock Creek Park sounds familiar to you, it's because that's one of the last locations that was searched on her laptop before she went missing, if you recall. And they did do a search of Rock Creek Park. However, according to Michael Doyle, the Washington correspondent for McClatchy News, who appears in the episode of Mysteries and Scandals, the police department was supposed to search within 100 yards of all roads and trails of Rock Creek Park, one of the places found in Chandra's laptop history. However, because of a miscommunication, only the roads were searched and not the trails. Now, this proved to be a costly mistake in finding Chandra. After the jogger found what he thought was a human skull, the police showed up and they also found a Walkman, a USC shirt, and an array of bones at the location. They used dental records and were able to determine that this was, in fact, Chandra Levy. They also found pants and what appeared to be tights, so that they believed that Chandra was bound with these tights, and that's how she was confined. When private investigator Joe McCann was asked to return to the crime scene later, he whimsically raked some leaves around the area where Chandra's body was found. When doing this, McCann found Chandra's femur bone. I suppose they could miss it, but I just don't know how, McCann says in Oxygen's Mysteries and Scandals. Now that reminds me of another case that I covered on my channel, which I will leave linked down below, and that's the mysterious disappearance and murder of Mitrice Richardson. Now, Mitrice Richardson also disappeared, and her body was not found until a year later. Now, the police did recover her body in a very hard to get to location. They similarly found not all of her bones, but they did find some of her clothes. Now, when the family went to go visit the site where Mitrice's body was found as a sort of memorial, they ended up finding her bones. They found a finger bone, I believe, and I believe a neck bone or something like that. Now, how police missed that, again, is very mysterious, because you think that once they go to a location where bodies found, they are pretty thorough so they can find all the bones and all the evidence that is left. But how do they both miss bones when the families, or in this case, private investigator Joe McCann, hardly even raked some leaves around the area and he found her femur bone? So another thing that we didn't really know before is that there was male DNA found on the belongings of Chandra Levy in Rock Creek Park. However, the DNA has not been matched to anyone, including Gary Condit. And also, they don't know exactly how Chandra died. Because Chandra's body spent a year decomposing in the woods of Rock Creek Park, medical examiners were unable to determine the cause of death. The clothing evidence recovered revealed no blood and no knife marks. And another thing is, days after her internship ended, Chandra had called her aunt, remember the one that said she knew all about the affair, and left a message that she isn't sure what she's doing during the summer, that she had big news to tell her. Many consider this one of the biggest puzzles of the Chandra Levy case. If you think that this case is over because she was found, it's not. There's so much more. According to Dr. Jonathan L. Arden, who is known for his expertise in forensics, and he consults in forensic pathology and medicine. He is an expert in forensic pathology and can provide independent analysis, sometimes corroborating the opinions of other experts, but sometimes providing opinions and interpretations as an additional investigative tool not otherwise available to attorneys. Experts are often retained during legal proceedings to evaluate and present medical findings and opinions within the reasonable medical certainty. He said that Chandra Levy's remains were found down a dark, steep embankment in the park. And they also said that the cause of death could not be determined. Quote, however, the circumstances of her disappearance and her body on recovery are indicative that she died through the acts of another person, which is the definition of a homicidal manner of death. Unquote. Because of the fact that it had been a year, there was little forensic evidence that was able to be recovered from the scene. As I said before, they were able to locate a Walkman, I believe a tennis shoe, some tights, a USC t-shirt, and if you remember, that's where she went to college. There's not much left. You have no DNA of a potential bad guy. However, I did read that there was male DNA found on some of the things that were left at the site where they found her, but they have not been able to match that DNA with anyone, including Gary Condit. and also the man that was accused of doing this. But they did say that the most important thing was that they were able to locate her remains. That way at least her family knows what happened to her and they're not still looking for her. At least it's some sort of closure. It's not a good closure. It's not what anybody wanted, but it's some closure that a lot of, unfortunately, people that go missing, their families never get. So there was an arrest and a conviction. In July of 2001, 2 months after Chandra Levy's disappearance, a man named Igmar Guandique, who was an undocumented immigrant from El Salvador, came to the attention of police. Guandique was taken into custody in July for attacking 2 women in the same park, Rock Creek Park, where Chandra Levy disappeared. One attack was in early July 2001, and the other one was in mid-May 2001. In 2002, Guandique was sentenced to 10 years in jail for assaulting the 2 women at knife point in Rock Creek Park around the time that Levy vanished. Chandra Levy's case, meanwhile, was moving slowly following the discovery of her remains. But in 2007, when new detectives took over the case, Guandique became police's primary suspect. And in 2009, he was charged with Chandra Levy's murder. To this day, Guandique maintains he is innocent. Quote, "I never met Chandra Levy. I never had any contact with her." Prosecutors' case against Guandique relied largely on testimony from Guandique's former cellmate. According to court transcripts, the cellmate, Armando Morales, said that Guandique confessed to him that he killed Chandra Levy and said he did not rape her. Morales said that Guandique said he saw Chandra Levy in the park and planned to rob her. Quote, he said, "He hid up in the bushes," Morales said, according to court transcripts. "He ran up behind her, grabbed her from behind by the neck. He dragged her into the bushes. He said by the time he got her into the bushes that she had stopped struggling." Morales and Guandique said that he stole her pouch or fanny pack and left. He said he never meant to kill her, Morales said, according to the court transcripts. Morales said Guandique told him that he learned she had died when he was already in jail in connection with two attacks in the park and was being questioned by detectives. Garrett said Guandique's alleged confession to Morales and the 2 other assaults were the primary pieces prosecutors had possibly tying Guandique to Chandra Levy. There was no forensic evidence linking Guandique to her death, and investigators say possibly because of the 12 months between Chandra's disappearance and the discovery of her remains, any evidence that was there would have been destroyed. Quote, "We don't really know how to link him to her other than the obvious sort of MO, Garrett said. "What evidence is it that he did it?" And the answer is there isn't any. Garrett continued, "No physical evidence, there's no surveillance, no DNA, there's nothing, there's no prior relationship. If Mr. Guandique had anything to do with it, it was the wrong place, wrong time kind of situation of her and him in the park at the same time." Also, another thing to note is the 2 women that he did attack previously in the park, he did not end their life, whereas Chandra Levy's life was ended. And also, we do know that Chandra was looking into Rock Creek Park prior to going there. So we don't know if she had made plans with someone else to meet them there, and maybe she just happened to be in Guandique's way or whatever. But it just does not seem like the type of crime that you fall into. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But Chandra Levy's mother, Susan Levy, says she wasn't 100% certain of Guandique's guilt either. But her father, Bob Levy, was convinced police had the right man. "I thought he was guilty," he said. So in 2002, Guandique was actually convicted of killing Chandra Levy. He was sentenced to 60 years in prison. The guilty verdict gave Bob Levy, her father, a sense of relief. Susan Levy agreed, adding, "But I didn't feel happiness." So, again, maybe it's that mother's instinct. It does seem like she knew all along that this was not the man who took her child's life. In 2015, in the face of accusations of prosecutorial misconduct in his first trial, prosecutors agreed to a retrial of Guandique. Guandique's attorneys argued that the prosecution's key witness lied on the stand when he denied cooperating with law enforcement in the past. So if you think about it, it's good to know if your snitch, jailhouse snitch, whatever they're called, has a motive. Because if this person has a motive to get less time or to get some sort of move to a lighter prison, like say they're in a high medium prison or whatever it is, and they want to be moved to a camp or whatever. Sometimes they can negotiate these things if they help prosecutors nail another guy for a crime. But I do believe that there are a ton of false confessions that happen in prison. And unless they have him recorded with a wire, I just don't know how reliable these confessions are, because why would he tell this guy this? You know what I mean? Like, why would he go out of his way and be like, "Oh yeah, I did this"? There was another reason that they believed that Guandique had actually indeed murdered Chandra Levy because he had a tattoo that resembled her. Now that's obviously not anything that can go on a record as a fact in court, but it's another thing that's a little strange. But again, there's no evidence. This is all hearsay, and it's hearsay from a jail inmate. So besides this, there was another really strange thing that happened in this case, and it involves an actress. Chandra Levy's mother said she was surprised by the new trial, but hoped it could give her clearer answers about her daughter's alleged relationship with Gary Condit, as he had never publicly admitted to the affair with her. At least, we heard that he admitted it to the police during the third interview with them, but that was a leak from the police to the media, allegedly. Quote, "There was a part of me that says, well, maybe Mr. Condit's going to be asked to come back and talk a little bit more in depth. And I was highly interested in that," she said, "because I still feel there's questions inside internally that, that I wonder about," unquote. Well, here's the weird part. Before Guandique's new trial could even begin, and that was in July of 2015 or 2016, more evidence surfaced that cast even further doubt on the former cellmate's truthfulness. Armando Morales, the guy that told authorities that there was an alleged confession from Guandique. So a woman named Babs Prowler told authorities that Armando Morales wasn't honest in his testimony regarding Guandique's confession. Prowler, a divorced mom who was between homes, told 2020 that she had met Morales earlier this past summer while they were both staying at a hotel in Maryland. One day, Morales helped Prowler carry her dog, Buddy. Then he began to join her and Buddy for walks, and they got to know each other, Prowler said. Keep in mind, Prowler was on the TV show House of Cards. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with anything, but it's just a little context for who she was. So Prowler said Morales told her that he had just been released after spending more than 20 years in prison. Morales told her he had been in a gang and was, quote, in prison for gang-related, drug-related charges, unquote. "He gave me no reason to be scared. He's carrying my dog into a hotel very gently, and he has all this affection and kindness. He felt sorry for whatever he had done. He convinced me that he was a completely changed man," Prowler added. "I totally believed that everything was fine." "He convinced me that he was a completely changed man," Prowler added. "I totally believed everything he told me." So one day, Prowler left for a trip to Ocean City, Maryland, and she said Morales insisted on taking care of Buddy and watching all of her belongings while she was away. It was on that trip that she said she learned that everything he told me was really a lie. "While I'm in Ocean City, he texts me pictures of himself and Buddy, selfies, how they're walking and how they're having a good time, and then suddenly I get a text from him, and the text has a business card of mine," she said. "I've never given him my business card. I've never given him my last name. I'm thinking, that's odd. The only place I have my business cards are in my locked file folder. At this point," she says, "I'm nervous. He betrayed my trust." So the day after she got back from the Ocean City trip, Prowler said Morales offered to accompany her to her storage unit, where she kept the bulk of her belongings while she was in between homes. When they went to the storage unit, Prowler said she started recording him without his knowledge because Morales had allegedly threatened to harm someone she knew. "I never in my life thought he would be talking about the case or for him to admit at any point that he had lied." They began talking about the Chandra Levy case, and Prowler said she asked Morales what Guandique told him. According to Prowler, Morales replied that Guandique had said, quote, "Homeboy, I killed that effing bee, but I didn't rape her," unquote. That is consistent with what Morales said in Guandique's trial. Prowler said Morales soon made it clear that he had lied about Guandique's confession. She said Morales said, quote, "The prosecutors wanted me to lie. They knew that they had the right guy. They just needed somebody to say it," unquote. Prowler said Morales called Guandique a thug who attacked 2 other women and, quote, "belongs in jail." Prowler called Morales a master of manipulation who can convince you of anything, and said his motive for lying in the 2010 trial was to be moved to another prison. Quote, "He had a mentor who had testified in a case and had gotten a reduced sentence. That mentor kind of put the thought in his mind, if you have any information in a case, then you can get better conditions in prison or get a reduced sentence," unquote. While secretly recording Morales, Prowler said she was terrified he would find her recorder. "I was just thinking, if he finds the recorder, he's gonna kill me," she said. Prowler said she offered the recording to Susan Levy, who suggested Prowler tell the prosecution and the defense about it. So 2020 actually obtained 7 hours of the recordings of Prowler's conversations with Morales, and they say that at no point in these recordings does Morales admit to making up Guandique's confession. But Prowler claims that there are additional recordings she says, that are no longer in her possession. The defense and prosecution are not believed to have additional recordings either. The prosecution says it only has the same 7 hours of recordings. So Morales' attorney told 2020 that Morales never told anyone, including Prowler, that he made up Guandique's confession. But regardless of all of that, in July of 2016, the case was dismissed. So the trial was proceeding without delay until Prowler's statements and her recordings came to light. In July 2016, a judge dismissed charges against Guandique at the request of prosecutors. So that's kind of interesting to me, considering they had just said that there was nothing within the 7 hours of recordings that would support the fact that Morales said that he had lied about it. I don't know. I don't know why they would drop it if they didn't have any evidence supporting that the case was actually not that great. So the charges against Guandique were dropped without prejudice, meaning he could be charged again in the future. I'm completely unbiased, Prowler added. I have no involvement in this case. I'm just someone who stumbled upon information. There is an answer to the story, and I think it would be important to find that answer. Susan Levy told 2020 she doesn't trust Prowler. Quote, I was just kind of stunned how within 5 days this would all unravel, Susan Levy said. Even though charges against Guandique were dropped, Bob Levy said he still believes that he is guilty. Quote, they had all this evidence. It just fit the whole scenario. It really fit, he said. It fell apart because this woman tampered with the witness and got him to say a bunch of things on tape, which was illegally obtained and recorded. He didn't even realize he was being taped. Why did she do that? He added. What was her motive? When questioned about her credibility involving Morales, Prowler told 2020, I've never taken anything from anybody. I have not taken money. What am I trying to scam out of this? Court records show that Prowler recently received 3 years probation for a theft case in Pennsylvania. With Chandra Levy's murder now back to being unsolved, the Metropolitan Police Department said it will, quote, continue to pursue any new leads that are uncovered or brought to our attention. Guandique did say that he wants Chandra Levy's parents to know that he did not kill her. If he could talk to Morales, Guandique said he would say, I'm nobody to judge or sentence anybody. He knows what he did. May God forgive him. So the dismissal of this case obviously shocked Chandra Levy's brother regarding Igmar Guandique's guilt. Adam Levy said, I don't know what to believe. He now says he feels a mixture of emotions, anger and disappointment, adding, my faith in the system has changed. I had innocence before everything happened. It stole my innocence. He said, it's hard to see things as bright. If Chandra Levy were alive today, she would be over 40 years old. I think about that a lot, Adam Levy said, about what her life and my life would be like if none of this ever happened. And of course, like everybody else, he hopes that someday his family will find out what happened to his sister. But for now, they have to go back to square one. I want someone to come forward and tell the truth, Susan Levy said. Someone knows something that I don't know. I don't think my daughter would run in the park by herself. Quote, I guess I'll have unanswered questions, but it's just sad, she said. And the story is, to me, is for women who are interns to be very careful who they meet. Susan Levy said of her daughter, there's never a day that I don't think about her, our future grandkids, and time that we would have spent together. We have moments of pleasure doing things together as a family, but deep down the hurt is there. The toll it has taken upon Bob and myself is very, very hard. It's painful and you don't heal, she said. Closure is a very bad word. There's no such thing. Adam Levy agreed. The better term, I think, is survival, he said. You survive with a loss. We thought we had the truth with Guandique. Now I feel like I'm going back to not knowing, Susan Levy added. If you didn't do it, then who did kill my daughter? Her mother did mention something that struck me, and I mentioned this in part 1, but while researching this case, I did find another mystery, and that is the murder of DC intern Joyce Chung. So I'll go over the details a little bit with you guys. So few people knew that another Washington intern, Joyce Chung, mysteriously disappeared 2 years before Chandra. Like I said before, there was no national media coverage, definitely not the type that Chandra's case received. But there are very eerie similarities between the two cases. So for starters, the two women lived in the same neighborhood and had worked for the same government agency. They were both young, brunette, and petite. Could there be a connection between the murders of Joyce and Chandra? For investigative reporter Timothy Meyer, the similarities were alarming. I strongly believe that these particular incidents involving these two women may have been committed by the same perpetrator simply because there are just too many similarities in this case to ignore. Joyce was the only daughter in a close-knit Taiwanese-American family. While in college, she served as an intern for the Representative Howard Berman of California. Gene Smith was the chief of staff for Representative Berman at the time of Joyce's disappearance. Quote, "She had a wonderful personality. She was just very cheerful. She'd light up a room. That kind of person. I mean, she was just adorable." So I guess after her internship, Joyce took a job as a lawyer at the INS. She lived with her brother Roger in the DuPont Circle area of Washington, D.C. Chandra would later move into the same neighborhood. So a favorite hangout for both was the nearby Starbucks. It was there that on that night of January 9th, 1999, Joyce Chang was last seen. According to Roger, earlier in the evening, Joyce met up with several friends for a movie and dinner. He said that at about 8:15, his sister was with her friend Kathy. Kathy had generously offered to give her a ride home, but Joyce asked to make one quick stop at Starbucks to grab a cup of tea. Joyce told her friends she would walk the 4 blocks home from the coffee shop, but she never made it to her apartment. When she also failed to return home, Roger called the police. Because Joyce was a federal employee, the FBI became involved, which does shock me that since she was a federal employee and the FBI was involved immediately, that this case did not get more coverage. So it did spur some local media coverage. A couple came forward with the first clue in the case. The couple was walking through the Anacostia Park and had found a billfold with Joyce's government credit card. They turned the card into the park police, but the credit card remained in the lost and found for days, until the couple saw Joyce's picture in a news broadcast. So they then called the FBI. Fearing valuable time had been lost, a 57-member search and rescue team scoured the area where the card was found. Among other personal items belonging to Joyce that soon turned up on the banks of the Anacostia River were her apartment keys, a video rental card, and the jacket she was last seen wearing. So police also searched the entire river, but they found nothing. Then, very sadly, 3 months later, a canoeist was paddling more than 8 miles down from where Joyce's personal items were discovered. The spring rains had forced a body to the shore. After 3 months underwater, DNA tests were needed to identify the body, and it was Joyce Chang. Roger Chang was the first to receive the news. Quote, "That's when all hope just dashed that Joyce was alive, and I quickly called my mother. One of the most difficult calls I've ever had to make. To tell my mother that her daughter was dead, and that's a moment that I'll never forget. The condition of her body made it impossible to determine how Joyce died." Sound familiar? As a result, the cause of death was listed as undetermined. Without evidence of foul play, investigators felt there was nothing more to be done. Despite being unresolved, the case was closed. Then 2 years later, as we know, in May of 2001, Chandra Levy's disappearance drew renewed media interest in Joyce. Too many of the similarities between the two were chilling, but the police actually did suggest publicly that Joyce may have taken her own life. Of course, Joyce's friend, Amy, was immediately critical. This is a woman without a history of depression. This is a woman who worked very hard in life and had everything to live for. To lose who she is by saying she was someone who would take her own life, I think is another injustice to her. But if she didn't take her own life, why was her jacket ripped? Why were her belongings left on the bank of the Anacostia River? And how did she get to the riverbank almost 5 miles from where she was last seen? According to Gene Smith, she never owned a vehicle, and there's no public transportation that goes there. To think that on an extremely freezing cold day in January that Joyce would get into the Anacostia River, put her head underwater, is patently absurd on its face. But after that, another mysterious clue surfaced. 3 days after Joyce was last seen at the coffee shop, a strange statement appeared on a nearby wall. It read, quote, "Good day, JC. May I never miss the thrill of being near you," unquote. Roger Chang believed this cryptic message was yet another foreboding clue that his sister was murdered. The initials JC, which are the same initials as my sister's name, and the content of the message, "May I never miss the thrill of being near you," is all just a little too weird, a little peculiar. So if a serial killer is responsible for these murders, there are those who believe that he has taken not 2 but 3 lives. Because here's something else. 5 months before Joyce's disappearance, a 28-year-old Christine Marazian was raped and murdered while walking home from a barbecue. According to Roger Chang, Christine fit the same description as Joyce and Chandra and had also been an intern. All 3 women lived in the DuPont area. All 3 women had dark hair. All 3 women were about the same height, and they were all here as interns at one point in their careers. So for some time, many people believe that these cases were indeed connected. I mean, they do seem like there's a lot of similarities. The area, interns, and they're all brunette. But luckily, 2 of the cases actually have been solved. So in the case of Joyce Chang, the case was closed because police have identified her killers as 2 DC area males who abducted Joyce and took her to the Anacostia River where they intended to rob her. Police believe that Joyce attempted to run from her captors but slipped on the ice, fell into the river, and drowned. One of the two men is currently in federal prison serving a life sentence. The other is believed to be Guyana, which has no extradition treaty in the United States. In November 2019, Giles Daniel Warwick was arrested in connection with the murder of Christine Morazian and the assault of several other women. The solving of these two cases gives me hope that eventually the case of Chandra Levy will be solved as well. It's only a matter of time and the proper evidence for the police to make the connections to whoever the suspect and killer is. But of course, there's a ton of theories on this case. As you can imagine, many people think that Igmar Guantico is in fact guilty and just escaped by chance of luck because of the alleged recordings. But others think that the love interest of Chandra, Gary Condit, is the guy that actually did this, because they said, why would she leave her ID in her apartment, other than the fact that that was one of Gary's alleged rules when they were hanging out together? Also, where she was found was only about 3 miles away from where he lived, where his apartment was in DC. Another thing is, people said that she had really good news that she was getting ready to announce, and some people think that she was pregnant. Of course, this is all speculation, and none of it is fact, obviously. Okay guys, so that is it for this very mysterious true crime case that I covered. And I want to know what you guys think. Did you guys know all the twists and turns about this case? Do you think that Gary Condit had anything to do with it? What about the man that was in the park? The guy in prison? I mean, there's so many different twists and turns of this case, which is one of the reasons it's taken me so long to cover it. So hopefully I was able to cover as much as possible. Let me know in the comments down below again what you guys think. Have you heard of this case? Did you know that because of the unfortunate event that happened in our own country on September 11th, 2001, that this case kind of got pushed to the side briefly because all of the focus was on our national security? So it's a really puzzling case to me, and I wish the family had a definitive answer. And I really, really wish we knew what she was doing, who she was meeting. I mean, I feel like we all kind of probably have an idea in the back of our head, but again, I want you guys to make that decision up for yourselves on what you think happened. So that's it for me today. Please subscribe to my channel, turn on your post notifications. If you're interested in more light-hearted content, I do have a second channel, which is following my pregnancy journey. I will leave that link down below, but if not, go ahead and watch my last true crime video, which will be posted here, or my last anti-MLM video, which will be posted here. So I love you guys so much. Please remember to always be kind to yourself and others, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be soon. I love you so much. Bye.